Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack, and tonight our Cleveland Cavaliers took on the Phoenix Suns for the first time this season. This was round one of a two-game season series that will see the Cavaliers take on the Suns once more a few weeks from now on April 3rd. And look, coming into this matchup, when you're going to be lining up opposite the trio of Kevin freaking Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, and you're without two of your best players in Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley, let alone two of your best role players and Max Strus and Dean Wade, you have to have your remaining guys step up and do so in a pretty big way. JB Bickerstaff and company obviously had their work cut out for them. This was the second night of a back-to-back. That's a recurring element as of late. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. But I was really interested to see how the Cavs would manage to try and contain Phoenix's star trio and what role player would end up stepping up tonight. And we know last night against Brooklyn, it was George Niang who largely kept the Cavs in the game for stretches. The Cavs were really, really dependent on him, and he came through despite that first quarter headlock. He put Nick Claxton in. And had the team been able to limit Brooklyn on the boards and knock down their free throws, they may have been able to overcome such uncharacteristically good shooting from the Nets. Obviously, that did not happen, but tonight's contest represented another opportunity for another member of the supporting cast to pick up the slack and simultaneously pick up a win against another quality opponent. Now, for those of you keeping track of that sort of thing, Cleveland had a record of 16 and 18 against teams above 500 entering tonight's game, and they were 14 and 6 against the Western Conference. They've actually done pretty well against the West this season, all things considered. Phoenix counts as both, obviously, so picking up a victory would have done wonders, in my opinion, because it's a confidence booster, right? And it allows the Cavs to keep pace as they continue to heal up and get some of these guys to return. And here's the thing, right? As I said on the last couple of pods, there's nothing that this team can do in the regular season to kind of dispel some of the notions and narratives that are around them, but winning helps, right? Winning is usually the best deodorant. It is something that can give you a bunch of confidence, especially heading in to the playoffs and down the stretch here. When you're underhanded, you're undermanned, you're shorthanded, whatever you want to call it. Tonight's game represented the Cavaliers an opportunity to kind of get a confidence boost, especially after last night's loss to Brooklyn. Well, you can make that 17 and 19 and 15 and 8, respectively, after the Cavs just weren't able to get the job done. They lost to the visiting Phoenix Suns by the score of 117 to 111. And I have some questions heading into this one, Cavs fans, but there are a couple of things worth noting in regards to Phoenix before we get to all that. First off, they are, in fact, one of the most efficient teams in the league. We saw that play out tonight. They ranked fifth overall in field goal percentage at 49.2%, as well as seventh in three-point percentage as a unit at 37.6%. And of course, it should also be mentioned that they are also near the bottom of the league in shots taken per game at 86.1, despite operating at a top 15 pace. What this tells me is that they are deliberate with their looks. We saw a lot of that, and they make the most of them. And how do they generate these looks, you ask? Well, a variety of ways, but they really, really love to hurt you in the mid-range area. They did time and time again tonight where they ranked second to only the DeMar DeRozan-led Chicago Bulls. Literally, I'm not kidding. Literally 11% of their points come off of mid-range shots. And that makes sense when you have players like Kevin Durant and Devin Booker who rank in the top 20 as isolation scorers, who are both fully capable of breaking a defense down. So I was really, really interested to see how Cleveland, minus one of their better defenders in Dean Wade, would handle things. And, honestly, they tried their best. They really did. This was a very fun game to watch as a fan of just pure hoops. So I'm not extremely upset. It just suck. This loss is tough, as B Skrill says down here. Definitely feels like a brutal loss, but I'm not as pissed as I usually am after a loss like this, honestly. And let's start from the tip, shall we? Where it was clear as day that Cleveland was ready to rise to the occasion for the most part. With so many regular rotation pieces missing, Darius Garland really needed to bring his A game to this one. And I honestly felt like in that first half, he balled out, man. You can't dispute that. The man obviously did. He was aggressive in getting to his spots. He attacked when he saw fit, and his teammates knew that he needed to touch the ball basically every single possession. He was the same lethal scoring threat that we've become accustomed to seeing over the past 2 seasons. He got hot early. And honestly, it was getting to the point where nearly every shot he put up made me feel as if he was going to find the bottom of the net, which it hasn't always been the case for him this season. Garland would go into the half with 25 points on an ultra efficient 8 of 10 from the field, including a blistering 6 of 7 from 3-point distance. And fun fact, those 25 were actually a career high for him in any first half. If I'm not mistaken, they announced that during the broadcast. He did his thing, at least in the first half, and he was the engine of this Cavaliers offense, at least one part of it. He would finish with just 30, though, after that hot start. He was the scoring punch for much of the night that the Cavs needed to counteract what the trio of Beal, Booker, and KD were giving Phoenix, and they combined for 44 points in the first half alone. The Cavs entered the half up by 70-63 after leading the game by 19 points at one half, if I'm not mistaken, at one point, if I'm not mistaken. So they were up. They were definitely up. And here's the thing in regards to Phoenix's star trio, you cannot truly stop guys like that. You just have to hope to find a way to contain them and at worst live with what they do, but try and limit what those around them are able to bring to the equation. And I don't feel like the Cavs are necessarily able to do that for large stretches tonight, as we'll talk about here in a bit. But it's not as if Phoenix doesn't have quality role players on their roster. Hell, Grayson Allen, resident irritant in his prime, right, is the NBA's current leader in 3-point percentage at 47% entering tonight. And he is as dangerous as they come when pulling that trigger out there. And I truly felt like he did that tonight. It may not have been like the quintessential night to point to his stat line and say, hey, this dude is an A1 shooter, but man, he was 4 or 5 from 3-point distance tonight. And when you got guys doing that as your supporting cast, it's going to be pretty damn hard, especially when you're having to figure out how to contain such star level talent in that trio of guys over there. And in regards to Grayson, it's just, you got to make sure that you have a body on him. I feel like the Cavs did that for the most part, but shooters going to shoot, and they're going to drop the shots most of the time. Especially if you're hitting them at a 47% clip. And you know who else, in my opinion, kind of played their role to perfection on that end? Yusuf Nurkic, who entered the game with a streak of 7 straight games with at least 10 rebounds, including a monstrous 31 rebound performance against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Dude is just a big presence out there, and he made himself felt. And he was constantly boxing Cleveland out and pulling down boards, as well as strong arming his way to the rim. And to be honest, he's kind of the perfect fit for what they have going on over there. He doesn't require a ton of touches. He'll run the floor. He'll pull down rebounds. He's efficient with the looks he's actually given. And in my opinion, there were points in that first half that he outplayed Jarrett Allen, or at least out physicaled him, because I feel like Jarrett Allen kind of rebounded in the second half. But Yusuf definitely, in my opinion, got the best of him in that first half. And when you have things like that, that just cannot happen, especially when you're down so much talent. You have to figure out ways to overcome. And one of those ways you can do it is through sheer toughness and physicality and just want to get more. And I felt like I felt like Yusuf was a big part in that, and just kind of taking Jarrett Allen out of the equation. John Turner says, we blew a 19-point lead, and the third quarter continues to be a huge problem. Yeah, I mean, when you really look at this game, though, it's tough, man. You're without one of your better perimeter defenders. Really, you're one of your better defenders overall in Dean Wade out there, and you're having to figure out how to contain the likes of Kevin freaking Durant, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker, some of the best scorers in the NBA. At least the first two are. And you knew it was going to be tough, right? You have George Niang as the primary matchup for Kevin Durant. I mean, that is not a recipe for success, but that's your choice, right? Because Isaac Okoro, he's got his hands full with Devin Booker and whoever else. whoever else they throw him out there on, whether that be Bradley Beal, and some possessions it might be Kevin, but for the large majority of George's minutes, it was Durant. And it's tough to kind of scheme around that when you're down Wade and you're down Mobley, and those are some of your best defenders. So yeah, defense is going to be kind of porous against a team like this that could put up a bunch of points if you let them. And that's exactly what happened in that third quarter. And as I said before, that trio themselves, they scored 44 of Phoenix's points, but they kind of turned it up in that second half where Durant, he would honestly, he would ultimately finish with a stat line of 37 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. And he knocked down 5 triples. And sometimes you just got to tip your cap to better offense. And that's exactly what happened tonight. Booker, he dropped 27. Beal, he had 24. There is only so much you can do. And when you're having to rely upon the likes of Darius Garland to be the head of the snake and to be your focal point of the offense, Darius alone is not going to be able to get it done. And that's not to say Darius was the only one out there doing things, because there's a couple of players that we're going to highlight here in a bit that did their thing as well. But we're talking about some of the best scorers in the game in Durant and Booker. There's only so much you can do from an offensive standpoint to overcome that. It really is just, it is what it is. And that is the point that we find ourselves in. Sometimes talent wins out, and that's kind of how I felt. That's kind of what I felt thematically tonight. I felt like the Cavs played a pretty good game, all things considered. They shot the ball overall pretty well, 48% on the floor, 40 of 84 total. They didn't necessarily knock down a ton of 3-point shots. There's one player in particular who I just have to kind of call out here. And that is Sam Merrill, who continues to struggle. And I talked about this a lot last night, but Merrill, man, the defense has definitely caught up to him. It's not as if Merrill can't shoot anymore. Obviously, that is not the case. He's out there, he's moving around, he's getting some good looks, but the defense, they are making sure to keep a defender around him at all times. They are flying around screens, navigating around screens to make sure that he does not have a free pass. They are making sure to follow him out in transition if the Cavs get out in that fast break. They're making sure to contain him out in the corners. And, he managed to kind of overcome this a little bit. He knows how to use his gravity. That's why he ended up with 5 assists tonight, because what he'll end up doing is attacking the closeout and dealing the ball off. And he did that a lot with Jarrett Allen tonight, which was a nice little development. But at the end of the day, Merrill's still got to knock those shots down. He was just 1 of 5 tonight, and it is not great. Over his last 5 games, he is now 6 of 31. If I'm not mistaken, if my math is not incorrect, he is now 6 of 31 over his last 5 games. That is not great. And that he is in probably the biggest slump of his Cavs career up to this point. And I'm not trying to pick on Merrill, but we know what Merrill is capable of. And I'm just saying, like, in terms of shot making, when you're having to match up with such offensively talented players on the other side, you kind of need your supporting cast to be able to knock down shots. And that just did not happen tonight. Isaac Okoro, who has experienced probably the best season of his career, right? It is easily, in my opinion, the best season of his career, especially from 3-point distance. He was just 2 of 7 from range tonight. And defenses continue to not really truly respect him out there. And I do think it's going to come in time, but obviously tonight was not the night for that. Usually if Isaac is pulling the trigger out there on that corner, especially, the defense is not sending a defender his way, or they're not really looking to make sure that they have a defender in front of him the same way they do with a Sam Merrill. That's just not the place that he is in yet. But he is becoming a better shooter nonetheless. Karis LeVert, who had a phenomenal game. Overall, he was just 3 of 10 from 3-point distance. Isaiah Mobley, 1 of 4. And then, George Niang, 0 of 6 tonight. George was one of the best players in last night's game. Tonight, not so much. It's just, it is what it is. And I continue to say, even with Niang, it's like it's hit and miss what you're going to get from him. And it might truly be matchup dependent. And now with him in that starting unit, they're counting on him even more so. Now with Dean out and Evan out, it's tough. You just never know from game to game what you're going to get from him. But still, all things considered, I'm not mad. I'm not mad at this type of performance. It does suck to suffer another defeat in a season in which the Cavs have just been fighting through a ton of injury adversity. It's tough. This is a brutal loss, and as many of you have said down here, they led by 19 points at one point, and to let that dwindle down and to ultimately lose the lead and they end up losing the game, that sucks. But this was a competitive one throughout. Like, now let's talk about that third quarter, right? Where honestly, I was about to lose my shit, not even only because of the fact that the lead was blown, but we just have not had a ton of luck staying healthy this year. And the latest victim looked like it was getting ready to be Darius Garland, who, if I'm not mistaken, rolled his ankle towards the end of the third after having such a great start to the game. And I was really, really fearful that we were about to lose him for a minute. And thankfully, he would end up returning in that fourth quarter. But when he left the game, the Cavs were down 93-89. They then used an 11-2 run to tie the game at 104 all with 7:50 left on the clock in the fourth. And that's because the role players stepped up in a major way by giving JB some really, really terrific minutes with Garland off the floor for the first 4 to 5 minutes of the fourth. And from there, it was just a good old fashioned dogfight. With the best offense really kind of winning. Thankfully, the Cavs, for the most part, they were up to the assignment. They could not get the job done, but I was genuinely impressed. Yeah, genuinely impressed with two players in particular on tonight's game. And that was Caris LeVert, who again had a really solid outing and is playing some of the best basketball of his career as of late. He literally did it all tonight with 17.6 rebounds and 11 assists. And this just so happened to be his fourth double-double of the season. And over his last 10 games, the man has absolutely been throwing out dime after dime after dime. He is now averaging 7.3 assists over his last 10. He's become one of the better playmakers on this roster. He's right up there with Darius and Donovan on his best nights in regards to facilitation. He really, really has that in his bag. He has that in his game. And the other player that I was really impressed with outside of Caris LeVert was Craig Porter Jr., who quite honestly just seems to make the right plays when given the opportunities to. And that's really been the issue for Craig, is a lack of opportunities, or at least a lack of consistent opportunities when the team is closer to full strength. But the dude is just unafraid of the moment, and he plays with the poise of usually reserved for veteran point guards. You don't see rookies like him typically come in and just have a calming presence about them and know exactly what the situation calls for. And a lot of that is probably due to the fact that he is an older rookie at 24. But I mean, he looks wise beyond his years out there. And I was just impressed with his ability to go out there and put the Cavs in a good position. He was one of the guys that really were able to kick off that 11-2 run in the fourth with Darius off the floor dealing with that ankle. But man, it was it was good to see him finally get some meaningful run. He's been doing that since Donovan has been out, since Max has been out. But I do worry that when those guys return, does CPJ move back to the bench, which kind of sucks. In and Out of the Abyss says, I trust CPJ over Caris, to be honest. If you're talking about purely decision making, I don't know, man. I mean, there are good qualities to both. I still, in a rotational sense, I'm rolling with Caris all day because Caris gives you so much positional versatility. I do feel like Caris is a really underrated defender. He's got length, obviously, and you can line him up in several different spots. He can function as a point guard. He is a shooting guard by nature, and if you need to put him out there at the small forward spot, you can absolutely get good minutes out of him from that position as well. And so I get why people might trust CPJ more, because that calmness and that just calculating demeanor that he has, it is very, very good to see him be able to present that, because there are times when you're looking at Darius Garland and you're like, dude, what are you doing? What the hell are you doing with the ball? Be a little bit more decisive and and calculated with with your passes. Don't be so lackadaisical. And then there are moments when you're like, Craig Porter Jr., he's really knowing where to place the ball. He knows exactly who to hit, and he knows how the play is going to develop. And you're like, man, sometimes I wish Darius Garland could present that. But in regards to Karras versus CPJ, I don't know. I still trust Karras a bit more right now. And In and Out of the Abyss also says CPJ loves driving baseline. They all do, man. And it's become like, I've seen Isaac do it a ton. We've seen him find guys underneath the basket for a lot of fairly uncontested looks. We've seen Isaac hit Jarrett Allen or Evan Mobley time and time again this season that way. Darius Garland has done that. Donovan Mitchell is really good at doing that. Craig Porter Jr. likes to do that too. And we saw him have a baseline drive tonight that resulted in a dunk in that fourth quarter, which was pretty awesome to see. But yeah, they all love to do that. The problem is that a lot of them step out of the bounds too, which was a big time issue in that latter portion of the fourth quarter. And you guys know what I'm about to talk about. Isaac Okoro, right? But before we get to that, Cleveland had the opportunity after they tied it up 104 all. The game kind of it was back and forth for a while. But Cleveland had the opportunity to kind of tie the game up again after they lost the lead. But they turned the ball over after Darius Garland tried to lob it up to Jarrett Allen, who kind of fumbled it a little bit. It wasn't the cleanest pass immediately, but it was still catchable by Jarrett Allen standards. I honestly felt Jarrett Allen could have pulled that one in. But Jarrett couldn't quite get that one down, and they ended up turning the ball over, which just absolutely sucks because they could have tied the game up right there. And they went down on the other end, and they had a good defensive stop, right? And even after that happened, we got a sequence in which Isaac Okoro steals the ball, if I'm not mistaken, and he's driving in transition. I think it was Grayson Allen who picked him up, and he ends up moving the ball over to Darius Garland, who tries to get the ball back to him, but Isaac ends up stepping on that sideline. And the Cavs, they challenge that's what ends up happening, but they lose the challenge, and you just hate to see it. Just because that was such a pivotal point. You just knew that had they been able to keep that ball in bounds, I truly believe they end up tying the game and maybe even end up winning, forcing overtime. But that just, you hate to see that. It sucks. There have been so many times this season where you're like, dude, why are you stepping on that sideline? Do you not know where you're at? But everybody's doing it. It's not just the Cavaliers. I've seen this happen in games league wide. But it sucks because the Cavaliers, after leading for a good portion of this game, they gave the lead back, and then they fought their ass back to get back into it. Even after Durant, Beal, and Booker really just put an offensive showing on them, and they fought back, and they just came up short, man. And that sucks. All of that being said, though, I cannot bring myself to be seriously upset about it. Are there takeaways from this game? Sure. It was nice to see Darius Garland have such a great first quarter, but it sucked to see him cool off in the second half. It was really nice to see Craig Porter Jr. get some run and play some really solid, meaningful minutes. It was cool to see Caris LeVert get yet another double-double. And one of the unexpected developments tonight was Damian Jones actually giving the Cavs some good minutes in relief of Jarrett Allen. In Jones' 12 minutes, he gave the Cavs 9 points, 5 boards, and it wasn't terrible on defense. And, that's really as much good as I can say from tonight. It wasn't totally bad. It was a fun game, all things considered. For anybody who wants to hear me rant and rave, I can't bring myself to do it, because just like last night's game, I felt like the Cavs played a pretty decent game. In and Out of the Abyss says, unpopular opinion, I don't think he was on the line. I think his heels were in the air over the line when he caught it. It's very possible. I know they looked at that film several times. I know they looked at that replay several times, but they just determined that he stepped on it. I don't know how they make these decisions, but that's what they made, and that's kind of what we have to live with. Sucks, because I did legitimately feel like Cleveland could have won the game had Isaac just stayed in bounds, whether he drives the basket and earns a foul like we've seen him do time and time again, or he kicks it back out to somebody else. Sucks, but that's a very yeah, it happens. It's just one of those things. That's that's about as much as I can really say about tonight's game. It was still a fun game to watch, all things considered, and I did truly feel like Cleveland entered this game with a chance because you just never know. In that past week, they beat both number one seeds in the East and the West, and then they proceeded to lose to the Nets and the Hawks, and you're just like, man, who is this team? It's hard to tell because we don't have all the pieces. And that's by no means an excuse, but it's maddeningly inconsistent and maddeningly frustrating. Like they're a fun ass team to watch when things are going well, and then they can be equally as frustrating because they go through lulls and they have defensive lapses and guys just stop making shots and the ball movement is limited and things of that nature. But yeah. Mm. I don't know. B Scroll says a couple of people trying to build up a little rant, but they sound stupid because they know they're down with injuries right now. I know. I mean, I'm not gonna call anybody's opinion stupid. This is what I'll say. I disagree with people who are like, seriously, if you're really pissed about this game, you're really pissed about losing. Losing sucks. I get that. But um oftentimes you can look at reasons why the team may have lost. They just could not keep up with the firepower of that star trio over there. And the role players did their part too, whether that be Drew Eubanks, uh, Grayson Allen, or Yusuf Nurkic. They stepped up. They stepped up. And I felt like on Cleveland's part, you did have some role players doing the same on our end, but sometimes the more talented team wins, or that's really what happens. They got out talented tonight. There's only so much heart and hustle and can do. Guys got to knock down shots. Guys absolutely have to knock down shots. Beast Girls also says, but the incredible part about the Cavaliers that they have won games with players out with injuries before. Yeah, they did. I mean, like I said, beat both number one seeded teams just last week without Donovan Mitchell, without Max Strus, without Evan Mobley. That's pretty cool. So we know it can be done. It's just you got to do it. You got to get good efforts out of the remaining guys, and it starts with Darius Garland, who for much of that second half was either non-existent or just didn't give the same type of impact he did in that first. A lot of people are complaining about the shot attempts tonight for him. He took 17 on the night. This is a game after that first half. He was 8 of 10 in the first half, right? So you would think that, hey, he'll keep it going. He'll keep shooting the rock as many times as it takes, especially if other guys aren't knocking down shots. And that just simply did not happen. He had 7 shots in that second half. Some of that was because he had to leave the floor, I think. But at the same time, it's not as if Cleveland wasn't able to retake the lead or at least tie the game, because they did that with some of the role players stepping up, with Craig Porter Jr. stepping in and filling in for Darius Garland, with Karis LeVert looking like one of the best playmakers in the league tonight. And it's just another example of a missed opportunity, which sucks. And so from that aspect, I get it. People are pissed. This is one that the Cavs let slip away. And I can't dispute that. But I'm not mad. Like, I'm not mad like I would be after other losses. If I was JB, I would have told Darius to shoot 25 to 30 times. In and out of the abyss says, I mean, that's what a lot of people believe, man. And I don't think you would necessarily be incorrect for believing that. I would have liked to have seen Darius Garland attempt a few more shots than the 17 overall that he had tonight. I would have preferred he at least taken 20, but at the same time, I truly felt like he tried to put guys in the best possible position to make their own shots. And ultimately, that just did not happen. I think I saw somebody else point out up here. Josh Contour says 8 of 36 on threes by anyone other than DG. That's pretty telling, right? You have Karis LeVert go 3 of 10. You have Okoro go 2 of 7. You have Niang go 0 of 6. You have Merrill go 1 of 5. Mobley 1 of 4. Jones 0 of 2. they were heavily reliant upon Darius Garland, and there's only so much Garland can do. Even if he's taking 25 to 30 shots a game, I'm not truly sure that is like a recipe for success long term either, because eventually you're going to need to be able to get things out of these other guys. And I felt like they did in large stretches, but they just couldn't get the job done. And that's really all it is. That's really all it is. They could not compete with the offensive firepower that they were lining up opposite in Booker, in the phenomenal Hall of Fame player in Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal. He was phenomenal tonight as well. And that's as much as I can really say. Josh also says, yeah, it feels like part of what made that stretch when we were winning was that Don was playing awesome, and let's capitalize that. Yes. And Dean, Sam, Okoro were all shooting 4% from deep. Yeah. And that's the thing, right? For all the people out there that are giving DG grief and saying, oh, if this was Donovan Mitchell, Donovan would have carried us. I'm not so sure. Donovan would have been phenomenal, but you can't make guys make shots, right? You can't make Merrill, who is really slumping right now, who is just 6 of 30, 6 of 35 over his last 5 games. You can't make him knock down shots. You might be able to get him in better positions, but at the same time, the way that the defense is defending Merrill, I'm not sure I'm not sure if anybody could really get him better looks. With Isaac, teams are still not truly respecting his ability to shoot the ball. And so he had many open looks. He just has to capitalize. And then, with Dean, obviously we know what Dean brings to the table, not even just with the 3-point shooting, but with the defense. If people think Dean isn't missed, I got something else to tell you, because this is a game in which you're like, man, put Dean on Kevin Durant and you live with the results. That proves just how valuable some of these guys who are missing are. Elliot Clayson says Garland has improved, but his turnovers are killing us. Sam crashing down to earth. Yeah, I mean, I can't. 5 turnovers is not something that I can really defend. It's undefensible. I do think that at the very least, he had a chance to really find Jarrett Allen prior to the Okoro possession in which Okoro stepped on the sideline. They had a chance to tie the game there. And I don't think anybody's talking about the turnovers if Jarrett Allen and Isaac Okoro don't end up having their own faults right there. But yeah, I mean, Darius definitely has to clean up the turnovers. Some of them are untimely. Some of them are lackadaisical. Some of them are just passes he's trying to fit into windows that just aren't there. That's about all I can say. Elliot also says Okoro passed up so many shots tonight. I hate to see it. I mean, yeah. But even still, with that being said, Okoro still took 12 shots, and he still pulled the trigger on from 3-point distance 7 times, which is still good, right? Still good. It's not necessarily where you want it to be at, but he's trending in the right direction constantly during this stretch. Beast Girl says on to New Orleans. Hopefully we'll get some guys back. Yeah, hopefully Dean's back. Hopefully we'll see what's going on with Max. Donovan, I know he's been reevaluated and things are starting to look better for him. But yeah, I mean, that's what we're praying for right now is just health. And I think that's a perfect way to leave it at. I don't want to keep harping on points here because I feel like I would be repeating myself. That being said, if you are watching for the first time on YouTube, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, whatever. It definitely helps. Helps more than you know. And with that also being said, like I always tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot of said review to itscavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you an invite. That said, go Cavs, on to New Orleans, and have a good night.